and welcome to today's meeting. I hear it's the only thing that people are paying attention to today across the country. Not true. So good afternoon and welcome to the January 20th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. I am Councillor Beal and I'm here in place of our mayor who is away today. So we'll continue. First on the agenda, we do have the consent agenda. And if we could have approval for the minutes of the council meeting held December 16th, 2024, and approval of the council meeting agenda. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Grenz. Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Any discussion? Sorry, I didn't have that. I'm out of practice. Okay. We do have one delegation today, and it's a pleasure to welcome Joanne Sales from the Broombusters Invasive Plant Society, and she's here to give us an update on invasive broom removal. So welcome, Joanne, and you have, I know you've done this before, so 10 minutes for the presentation, followed up by any questions or comments from council members.
Okay. Okay, so good afternoon and council members. And yes, I'm Joanne Sales, Executive Director of Broombusters Invasive Plant Society. And Parksville's been cutting broom with Broombusters since 2007. So yes, I've been here before. This past year, 600 plus volunteers cut broom for over 6,000 hours, and 100 Parksville Qualicum Beach residents cut broom for over 1,400 hours. So Broombusters work from Souk to Alert Bay, from Ucluelet to Coquitlam. 17 municipalities and regional districts now support Broombusters. So quickly, why do we have such a problem with this alien invasive plant? It spreads rapidly, forms dense thickets, crowds out native plants, prevents forest regrowth, highly flammable, toxic to grazing animals, wildlife, takes over farms, cleared forest and parkland, and leads to a dramatic loss of biodiversity. Something unusual happened last week. We had 60 new volunteers sign up for Broombusters in January. Okay, why? The LA fires. That's what everybody's concerned about. So that's the focus that I will have for this day. That's Alberni Highway, by the way. So much broom there on the banks from last year. So there is an increase of wildfires globally, and the primary culprit is climate change. But the prolific spread of flammable alien invasive species is making wildfire a danger in places that historically had few fires. Hawaii fire in 2003 killed 101 people. The intensity and spread of that fire is attributed to bufflegrass. And you can see the picture above there. Bufflegrass is an alien plant. It doesn't belong there. It moved in after the sugar canes were moved out, and it's highly flammable. Same thing in Chile in 2024, killed 134 people. The intensity and spread point to non-native plantings. So grasses, shrubs, and trees that humans have introduced to new ecosystems are increasing wildfire occurrence and frequency. On Vancouver Island, our flammable invasive alien species is Scotch broom. So you've heard this quote before. Scotch broom is a volatile flash fuel. It will increase a wildfire's fuel load, escalate the fire's intensity, compromise fire situations, and make fires more difficult to fight. So why is broom so dangerous? Using the terminology of firefighters, we'll break it down. This is from FireSmart. These are the 13th highest risk flammable plants we should avoid, and there is broom right at the top of the list. So broom increases fuel load. Broom forms impenetrable, dense thickets, which create massive fuel load and increase fire intensity. The picture in the bottom left, that broom was not dead. That was, I think it was 2015 when it was just a really hot, dry summer. And that's what the broom looked like. So you can see how flammable it is. And then we have Coombs Trail, we have Hydro Lines Farm. So this is also from FireSmart. So ladder fuels and high continuity of plants can increase fire risk. So as you look at this graph, it's clear what those two things are. So broom does create fuel continuity. Broom spreads densely down roads, railroad tracks, trails, farms, and power lines, and broom provides continuous fuel for a fire to continue to spread. Broom is a ladder fuel. Ladder fuels carry fire vertically from ground level into tree canopy, from lawns into houses, from shrubs to tall trees. Broom is not a short plant. It can grow 9 to 10 feet tall. And even in the power lines, the picture on the far right, you can see that it might look like it's small from the top, but it is not. It's not short at all. It's very, some of the broom on the power lines is very big. Danger of urban interface fires. Broom is a significant threat as a fire hazard for urban interface fires within our region because broom is close to where we live. It's intermingled with what we live on vacant lots, on the Coombs Trail, along the banks next to our highways. Ignition sources. Broom is called a volatile flash fuel because it catches fire so easily, but a fire will not start without an ignition source. The U.S. Park Service estimates that 85% of their fires are human-caused. Campfires, burning of debris, malfunctioning machinery, cigarettes, fireworks, and arson. Certainly those are all things that threaten us as well. Would particularly like to draw attention to fireworks because that's something that we have control over, and I think we should control it. The Eagle Creek fire that burned 48,000 acres in the Columbia Gorge in Oregon in 2017 was started by a single firecracker. And the teenager who started that fire certainly had no intention of doing that. So we can make it not possible. What are our weaknesses and what can we do to protect our communities and island? Well, one major problem we have is broom on BC hydro corridors. So broom covering the transmission line greatly increases the danger that fire could spread across the island. It spreads seeds across the island, it blocks escape routes and endangers the power supply. And if you look at the map there, you can see that it is totally a straight line, which is a frightening thought to think about. So is this a good idea? This is something that Broombusters has no influence over, but municipalities actually do. Want to point out exit 51, the northern exit, Parksville, Coombs. It is outside Parksville, but Parksville is so close. And the south side of that interchange, Broombusters have cleared those two sections, but the north side has so much broom on it, and under it and all around it. It's a shared responsibility of Island Corridor Foundation, BC Hydro, RDN Parks, private developers, MOTI. Fire doesn't care, doesn't care whose jurisdiction it is. This intense area of broom is so close to Parksville that it has Broombusters concerned, and we would like to work with each one of these, well, they're a conglomerate of things who have responsibility there, and also, you know, work ourselves to try to clear that to make it safer for Parksville and the community. And it is possible to make exit 51 safer. Since 2012, Broombusters have successfully cleared 90% of the broom at exit 46, the south entrance into Parksville. So you see the picture of 2012 and broom was everywhere. And then you see the picture of 2023 and you don't see any broom. Broombusters as a group have worked there. And we also have one man that lives here in Parksville that works over 200 hours a year. And that's his personal mission, is the battle of exit 46. Here's another thing to be concerned about: private property problems. So private forests are too often stripped of trees, cleared for development or farming, but then the land is left neglected. And if broom is nearby, broom takes over. Broom fields are a tragedy we could prevent. So some of you know about Spring Hill Road. I have never seen it without being covered with Scotch broom. A new broom forest is forming near Topbridge, and this is inside Parksville. The forest was cleared and there is broom adjacent to it. And these pictures actually are not current. The broom is starting to cover this area. And then it will be another flammable field. We all know about the Alberni Highway 80 acres there. So in 4 years, 80 acres of Alberni Highway, Highway 19 got covered with broom. There are new owners now, and that is great. But it's important to look at what happened in 4 years. So 2020, the forest was cleared. 2022, you can see how the broom was spreading. And then within 4 years, the broom was 5 to 6 feet tall. So chipping, people always ask about chipping. Scotch broom does not resprout from pieces of branches and roots. Broom spreads only by seeds. This is really important information about how to actually get control on Vancouver Island, because chipping in place is safe until the seed pods form. Some transfer stations accept broom and some do not. But we have a problem in BC that some regional districts now require that cut broom be put into plastic bags for disposal, which is absolutely impossible. The result, many volunteers have stopped cutting broom. So we need to distinguish between the different kinds of invasive species. The intention of that ruling was very good. They don't want to spread invasive species. But again, broom does not grow from pieces of branches. So it's not like Japanese knotweed. So there has to be education at a regional district level so that people can dispose of broom, because if they can't, it's just going to spread without any control. But I do think the RDN is much better. Okay, so thank you, Council, for your support. We ask that the city continue to remove the broom cut by volunteers, and we ask that bylaw officers enforce Parksville bylaws against Scotch broom. And we ask that Parksville be part of the conversation about Exit 51. It's not within the city, but it's part of the conversation. So, can't leave this problem for future generations. Let's stop the spread of broom. Thank you. Wow.
Perfect.
I practiced all weekend.
Oh, it shows, Joanne. That was exceptional timing. Do we have any questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Joanne. This is sort of dear to my heart. I've been involved in broom for probably 40, 50 years myself.
Oh.
And my dear sister, who had a back problem, started to clear some on our family property. So finally we got Broombusters in and we got 5 acres that's cleared. And I just had 150 pounds of seed put on last year or the year before on that area to try and eliminate the broom, you know, because it takes, is it 20 years for that seed to be gone? Do you know?
Somewhere between 20 and 70 or 90,
Yes,
you know, it's just so
that's
many
right. So
different.
we decided to seed it and see if we can stop it from coming back. So I appreciate what you're doing, and we just have, it's great you've got more volunteers helping, because we have to keep up with it. I mean, we don't, we'll be taken over as you've sown. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
It's excellent, Joanne. Thank you.
Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Joanne. It's like an annual event. We have you here present to the council. I want to, for the council, I want to thank you and the volunteers for the amount of hours and the hard work that you guys put in to control broom. My question is, when certain parts, which are like public crown land, which you clear, let's say exit 46, to make sure it's not like 5 years down the road, you have to do it all over again. Do you make recommendations or to perhaps like reforest the area, replant some trees? So rather than the broom taking over, and it looks much nicer to have the trees back. Is that ever part of the plan with the Broombusters, or it's not your mandate?
Well, we primarily cut in places like along roads where you can't replant trees. And most of the time there is enough of the native species that if we cut it so that we're not disturbing the soil around it, the native species or the grasses or the weeds, whatever it is, will grow. So we haven't taken that on too much. We have planted trees in various places, but it's a slow process to get trees to actually get thick and large enough to the better thing is just not to cut it down. Seeding an area that's a broom forest is a good idea. But actually we have like the exit 46, there's 2 women from Parksville that they go back every year and they just, anything that's coming up, they just go after it right away. We don't wait for 5 years. And the reason why we try to have people work locally, close to where they live, is because their job then that they adopt by themselves is to keep the area clear. But yes, I believe that replanting would be good, but we haven't been able to take that on.
Councillor Grant?
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. Through you to our delegation, thank you very much for your presentation again today. Do you have any sort of concrete proposals around how to coordinate across jurisdictions for that exit 51, for example?
I haven't the faintest idea how to approach all those different groups. If you have any ideas, that's awesome. I was just going to approach them one at a time. And we're already working with the RDN parks. And so, that's not going to be any problem because as volunteers, we know that we can work there. As you saw in the pictures, it's too big for us to work to do the BC Hydro, plus disposing of that. It's just too much for us. I do believe that MODI will help and main roads, I think, will help because if we make it a specific area, so that we're just like trying to clean the area. Now, Broombusters has cleared most of the broom between the two entrances into Parksville. There's a little bit there, but it used to be everywhere. Now we've been hiring people actually, and they've been working on that. So now we just want to go in both directions to keep this area safe as possible. Nobody's safe. But if you have any ideas, please share.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, follow up. I mean, perhaps maybe through to staff that I think there's some coordination maybe at the RDN level happening. I know that this is an issue that staff is on top of quite a bit in terms of awareness around broom being a problem. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Through yourself to Joanne. Just thinking about, you mentioned bylaw, Parksville bylaw services in your presentation. Within the broom community, the broom cutting community, do we have a good reputation of bylaw following up when we get complaints? Obviously, it's a complaints-driven process, or is there room for improvement?
Yeah, there's room for improvement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Joanne. We'll take that away. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would also like to add a couple of questions and comments myself. One, picking up on what Councillor Grens had to say, I'm just wondering if there is, let's say, a plan for communication or some proposals to BC Hydro and others who are working in that area. And as part of that, is it helpful to from your presentation, I gather, it can, in my own experience, it can travel, as you say, along a road. So I wonder if, similar to fire breaks, is it helpful to target areas and create some breaks? And is that perhaps something that BC Hydro can be looking at, or has there been any direct correspondence with them on this topic?
They're not particularly influenced by Broombusters. I do speak to somebody every year. And what we've been told is that they don't do anything because there's no pressure from governing entities. So I think Parksville has a voice, and we are speaking with different municipalities that actually have the power lines going through the city and asking them to ask BC Hydro to clear those areas that are right inside their boundaries. So that would create some fire breaks. But once again, we don't have any power to do this, but you do. Yeah.
If I could make a suggestion, thinking about other events or other requests, sometimes what we do is we get a request from an organization to provide a letter of support for a request that they are making or for contact that they are making. And that might be an avenue that you'd like to pursue. And it would be both with, to request a letter of support from the city, from the RDN, from the town of Qualicum Beach. Just that is one avenue that organizations do use when they're wanting to reach out to other levels of, authority. So
thank you. We will do that. Appreciate that. That suggestion.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from council? No? Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank you.
Now, in our agenda today, we do have one item of correspondence, and that was from the Ballenas Grad Committee, and they put in a request for funding support. And I believe that you have the letter ahead of the request ahead of you. Councillor Grenz, would you like to? Oh,
No,
yes,
I'm gonna
Councillor
recuse from
Grenz,
this
yes. Councillor Grenz is recusing himself from this particular discussion. Pardon me? Yeah. Okay, so regarding the request for some support, is there any thought from any council members regarding this? Oh, receipt. Yes, we do need to move receipt of the correspondence. Thank you, Councillor Wood, and seconded by Councillor Grenz. Oh, sorry, Councillor Grenz, Councillor Gore. Yes, sorry. I actually have this written right out in front of me. Maybe I need to put my glasses on. Yes, that the correspondence from Ballenas Secondary School 2025 Dry Grad Committee received December 12, 2024 regarding a request for funding to support rental of the Jensen Center for a fundraising event be received. So moved by Councillor Wood and seconded by Councillor Gore. Is there any discussion regarding this? Yes, Councillor Martin.
Thank you for taking on this responsibility, Madam Chair. Thank you. Is this something that we do every year? Do you know? Does any feedback on this? I have.
My understanding is no, that not necessarily. In previous years, there may have been direct support for the Dry Grad event. In this case, this council had approved $1,000 towards the Dry Grad event. And they are also hoping to do some further fundraising. And with that, are hoping for our support to secure Jensen Center for that event.
Do you have another question? Do you know if we do that, do they get a special rate or something, or no? How does that work?
Okay. Through to our CAO to answer that.
Thank you, if I may, through you. So the city has an operating agreement with BGC, and I believe they do have nonprofit rates, but they do need to charge the community rental space in order to offset the provision of the daycare services with no subsidy request or financial support from the city. So our understanding is that we don't actually know how long the request is for the rental, but it's around $1,100 to rent for the full day. But we just checked with them on what that rate was going to be. So we don't know again if they need it for the full day or not, but we don't typically provide this as a line item or a regular item. That's why it's coming back to council today.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wood, do you have something?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I was just more wondering about if there's a dollar value attached to this ask. It just helps me make my decision, and that might come up later, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think as our CAO just explained, we don't actually know the length of time that they are hoping to have the facility for the purpose of the dance. I do not know how much decorating they were expecting to do for this dance. I understand from our CAO and also from personal experience booking the center that it is about $1,100 for the full day. Personally, I wouldn't think that they would need it for the full day for this event. So perhaps some of that is what they're hoping for. Councillor Gore.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just following up previously what our CAA was talking about Jensen Center being available. And we know in the community, this always been very contentious since BGC has been using Jensen Center, that is it really available for the community to use? And I understand that we have, as a city, the use of the space for free, correct? as city events, we can use that for free. Is that correct?
Okay.
If I may-
Councillor Gore, I'll let our CAO answer, but that's not quite exactly the case. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you. If I may go through you, Madam Mayor. I won't address the first part of that question. The question to me, I think, is whether the city is allowed to access the space. So for city events like an emergency reception center or a candidates forum or our elections, we do access that space for free. We have in the past been able to access it for training purposes. But if we were hosting an event, in the past, we've always paid. When the other operator was operating, we always paid as well. So I assume that would be the same. Sometimes we provide just like a cost of, like, rather than a rental amount, we provide the cost of using the space. So like janitorial or whatever. But technically we are allowed to access it for free for our own civic community events, like I mentioned.
Correct. The reason I ask, Madam Chair, is this request, again, it's another annual event. People graduate every year, and we have these requests from the parents and the committee that runs this show. So what I would like us as a council, I think, have that space made available at cost, or I would like us to do it as rather than every year asking the committee to come to us and having to approve a dollar amount. I would like us to work with BGC, have a day reserved when they can come and use the space, and the city, if it's operating cost or whatever cost they bill to the city, have it come out of the council contingency. I personally don't like making the parents and the kids go through this every year. I would like to give them some certainty so we can have this place reserved on an annual basis, ongoing.
Thank you, Councillor Gore, and I believe our CAO would like to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you, if I may, through you. So just for clarification, this is not an annual request that we get for dry grad. This is for a non-grad. This is not for the grad itself. This is for a party or fundraising event that the parents want to host. So this is a one-off. We've not had this come before us before, to my knowledge. The council did approve a Ballenas grad support in the committees of the whole that we had before Christmas. They attended, and council did approve an amount. This is separate and not directly for grad, just for clarification. So I guess that might be a bit of confusion around what this actually is being for. So my understanding is council approved the amount. I think it is 1,000. I'd have to double check the amount, but that is going to be a line item amount directly for grad, for dry grad. Not, this is different.
Right. Okay. Oh, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Miss Madam Mayor. It says right in the letter, we granted $1,000. So we must have, which we did already. So this is separate. It's not like you say an annual thing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just so we're clear about that. Thank you.
Any further comments, questions from councillors? No, I would like to speak to this as well. I think that Councillor Gore brings up, you know, a very a valid concern. However, I don't think that that's the request exactly in front of us at this particular time. And I think that there is time to think about how we might, as a council, as a community, support our graduating students in the coming year and not leave it to the last minute. And I would agree that it can be a bit challenging to have, you know, parents have to do everything at the last minute, it seems to, and come hat in hand. But for this particular request, my understanding, I did speak with our CAO ahead of time to find out that whether or not there might be some funds that we could access in order to assist the parents with this fundraising event, which is meant to raise money for the dry grad event. So although it's not directly, it is directly related to it. So if I would like to go ahead and make a motion.
Sorry, if I may, we just have a motion on the floor to receive.
Oh,
And
yes,
so if
sorry,
that
thank
question
you.
is called, then we can entertain another motion after
Okay,
that.
thank you for keeping me on track. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we do have and if there's no further comments at this time, are all those in favor of receiving the correspondence? Thank you. And any opposed? No, we're unanimous. Thank you. That is carried. So I would like, unless someone else would like to make a motion, I would like to make a motion at this time. And I would like to make a motion that council approve a one-time grant in the amount of $500 from council contingency to assist with rental costs for the Jensen Center for a fundraising event hosted by the Ballenas Secondary 2025 Dry Grad Committee. Seconded by Councillor Wood. Any further discussion about this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. That is unanimous. Okay. Moving on. Reports. This is the time when we get to hear from our wonderful fire chief. So, Fire Chief Norris, speaking about the designation of fire inspectors and fire investigators. So do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Grenz, we really haven't moved ahead too much. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the report from the fire chief dated January 8th, 2025, entitled Designation of Fire Inspectors and Fire Investigators be received, and that designation of fire inspectors and fire investigators policy number 9.28 as attached to the January 8th, 2025 report from the fire chief be approved, and that the corporate policy manual be updated accordingly. Moved by Councillor Gore and seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? I'd just like to say that we love our fire department and all the people who work there, both paid staff and volunteers. Oh, Councillor Gore. Was there no? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question to our staff. So since we do have these functions currently being done in the fire department of a fire inspector and fire investigators, we just don't have the formal designations, correct? Right.
Through
the
to
chair
our
to the
fire
coun-
chief.
Through the chair to our counselor. In August 1st of last year, the Fire Safety Act came into force, which replaced the Fire Services Act. The act requires us to go through this process of designating inspectors and investigators. So yes, we do have them. We have always had them. They are qualified. They do meet all the provisions of the act. This is just to formalize the requirements of the act.
A follow-up, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, Chief, in the fire protection area that Parksville Fire Department is responsible for, are there any other departments that have fire inspectors and fire investigators? The reason I ask this is just in case these requirements come up, and in the fire protection area in the ocean side, would Parksville Department be always the one getting the calls to have these inspectors and investigators come? Would that increase your staff hours or the total work for the staff with these designations being formalized?
Okay. And Fire Chief Norris?
Through the chair to the counselor, when I consider in terms of definition of the fire protection area, that is the area the Parksville Fire Department services.
Okay.
And so there are no other fire departments in that area. We have neighboring fire departments, predominantly Town of Qualicum and the regional district fire departments. The responsibility of those authorities is their own. We have responsibility in our fire protection area and through contract to the contracted areas of the regional district that we service.
Thank you. Is that clear?
Yeah, so yeah, maybe I used the wrong terminology in the fire protection area. I meant in the ocean side, we do have, like, say, Qualicum and RDN areas. They also have fire inspectors and fire investigators in their departments? Was my question, sorry.
Yes.
Through the chair to the councillor, the requirements for municipalities and regional districts are different. And you can have investigators. You don't have to have investigators. If you choose not to have investigators, the fire commissioner's office will do it. But there are investigators and inspectors in the areas in the other areas. We share information as local committees and provincial committees with, our investigators work with the adjacent investigators. Our inspectors talk to the adjacent inspectors, but we're not inspecting or investigating each other's fires.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or discussion, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? No, we're unanimous. Thank you. Following up now, we have reports, starting with the Emergency Program Coordinator 2025 UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Emergency Support Services Grant Application. So this is to seek council approval for staff to apply for regional grant funding for emergency support services, supplies, and training. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that the report from the Emergency Program Coordinator dated January 10, 2025, entitled 2025 UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Emergency Support Services Grant Application be received, and that council approves staff to apply for, receive, and manage grant funding of $45,900 from the UBCM Community Emergency Program Fund to enhance capacity of Oceanside Emergency Support Services. Moved by Councillor Martin and seconded by Councillor Wood. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And on to reports, starting with the Director of Community Planning and Building, a follow-up report, official community plan and zoning amendment of Wembley Mall. Further consideration of an official community plan amendment and zoning and development bylaw amendment. So do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that the report from the Director of Community Planning and Building dated January 8th, 2025, entitled Follow-Up Report, Consideration of an Application for an Official Community Plan Amendment and Zoning and Development Bylaw Amendment at 806, 810, 814, 818, 822, 826, and 834 Island Highway West, Wembley Mall, file number 3360-PZN044 be received. Okay, shall we break those up into?
Yeah,
parts?
let's move 1 through 3.
Okay, pardon me, sorry.
I'd move items 1 through 3.
1 through 3.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can carry on with that. That comments collected by the applicant in response to their public open house be received for information and considered. And that where applicable, comments from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, the Regional District of Nanaimo, the Agricultural Land Commission, and School District 69 be received for information and considered. I've had a request for that. And so moved by Councillor Grenz that we look at those 3, and seconded by Councillor Wood. Okay, any discussion about those first 3 recommendations at this time? Yeah, Councillor Grenz, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Question through to staff, whether staff has any awareness around how this, what may happen on the neighboring properties, because I understand they're all kind of, so there's the piece next door, which I'm not sure what's going to be happening there, if there's any, staff is aware of any plans for that one. And I also see a potential opportunity to, sorry, I'm a little under weather today.
That's okay.
My brain is not working that well. What may be happening in the future on the Wembley Mall site itself, if the staff has any information on that that's not in the report.
CAO Kaler.
Sorry, if I may just get some clarification. Is Councillor Grenz asking about the private parcels on the other side of the road? Or do you mean other development on the site itself, which I know is like multiple different, okay, so all within the Wembley Mall site. Thank you. Blaine, do you want to answer?
If I may,
Mr. Russell.
Chair, through to Councillor Grenz. At this time, there isn't anything specifically proposed for the northern end of Wembley Mall. When this application was originally received, there was a proposal on that end, very similar to what's being proposed on the southern end of the site. However, due to the complexity of basically addressing Stanhope Road and coordinating with interjurisdictional needs, the application was pared back to what is before council, being presented to council today. So whether or not the north end of the site proceeds as was previously proposed, only time will tell. It's obviously going to be dependent on market conditions and probably the success of the project on the southern end. With respect to the nearby properties, I think you're referring to the properties further south that sort of go more into that triangle wedge. We haven't had any discussions with anyone for years on those properties. I do recall many years ago some possible commercial inquiries, but there really hasn't been any discussion for a number of years on those ones.
Any further questions or discussion regarding recommendations 1, 2, and 3? Councillor Grenz.
Yeah, I think overall, I'm quite happy to see some of the changes or some of the evolution of the proposal since we last saw this presented to council. And I'm glad that the proponent has done the open house and gotten some feedback from the community around it. I think that with the fact that this is part of the Wembley Mall area, that the community would benefit from seeing an overall facelift for the Wembley Mall overall, like that entire site. And I wonder if there's, I get that these are separate parcels and properties, but from the perspective of the community, I think they will be seeing that if there's construction happening right next door to the liquor store there, for example, that they would also want to see some improvement to the entire Wembley Mall, and that might be an opportunity to do that. And I don't know what opportunity there is for that, but I just want to put that out there that I see that that's something that the community would probably want to see as part of this.
Thank you, Councillor Grenz. I'd like to make a few comments as well. I was reviewing out of the official community plan, the shopping center commercial, which is that area where Wembley Mall is. And I'd just like to read this out, that because I agree with your comments that this is it's a bit challenging because this is considered to be a sub-zone. However, it is the same owner for the whole property, and that includes the rest of Wembley Mall, et cetera. And here I read that large shopping centers often act as important landmarks within a city, and as a result, development on lands within this designation should be sensitive to the important visual impression they create, as they are often destinations. Attractive landscaping, signage, and traffic controls are important considerations for future development or redevelopment of these sites. Now, I understand that this proposal before us is not for redevelopment of the other area, but I guess I do have, and I don't know if we can actually address any of that or if the developer can, but I am curious to know if there might be some future improvements or if that's something that we can insist upon when they come forward. I will add that a number of years ago, there were some changes to the original part of the mall that included basically eliminating that interior section and having storefronts that would be facing either way, and also the addition of a breezeway. Now, I believe that's still the same there. At the time, when I saw the plan for that breezeway, it looks quite attractive on paper. And the reality is that it's a cold, gray, uninviting space to go through with signs that say no, 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 no. It supposedly was going to have plants in some of those planting areas between the benches, but there was no provision for any watering of them. Those have died. They're just empty pieces of dirt in there. So I'm a little worried. I want something to, I looked at that on paper at the time and thought this is going to be very nice. It's going to add to that visual. So I don't want to be, fooled again. In a similar vein, there were some nice additions. There was pedestrian access and some picnic tables up on that north end in the rear. The other end, I'd asked at the time about pedestrian access, and the pedestrian access comes around the sidewalk and dumps people right into the traffic lane and the loading lane. So I guess I want to be reassured, if we can, by the proponent that what we are presented with after it goes through the ADP and others, that it ends up actually looking as attractive as it looks on paper. So I don't know if there's anything that we can ask that would give us some of those reassurances. I would like to go on to say, though, there are many things that I do like about this proposal. It seems to me that having residential in this area is a plus. All over the place, we see malls that are really not, failing or, sad, let's say sad, and having residential in an area where people can walk and shop and they don't need to get in their cars. It's wonderful. I think there's some reference to that as well in the policies regarding the shopping center area, that, pedestrianization is desired. I like seeing that it's indicated that it would be a mixture of owner and rental, which I think is an interesting idea. I see that the setbacks for the underground parking just meet the minimum setbacks, but it looks like the facade of the building, the setback from Wembley Mall, is significantly more. But I would really like to see that that's confirmed. I wouldn't want to see that any closer to Wembley. On one point, if it's to scale, it seems off, but I believe I read that it's 40 feet back from the road there. So I think that's a plus. But I do find that there's some confusion when I go through the report. At one point, it shows a rain garden. At another point, it shows a playground. So I don't know what the plan is there. There were some questions that came up about whether or not units would have cooling. And I think that as we move forward, that's something that we should be concerned about. I don't know if that exists in our what do you want to say, our building requirements at the present, but maybe that will come into being, but I think that is a concern. I see that community amenities include bicycle parking. It's not clear to me if that means something just for people who are shopping there or people who are using the facility. I just find that there are a number of questions that I have when I look at this closely, and I think it's an opportunity to do something that's really very attractive and needed and of value. And I'm just not sure that all of those questions, it seems to me that there's quite a bit of clarification that would help for me when I look at this. I see that it's gone from a step 2, which was what it was originally promoted, to now it says step 3. The presentation to the local neighbors was, I guess, an older version. And so again, there's some contradictions. At one point, it looks like a drawing has at a higher end might be on the northeast side, but then at some point it says something about the southeast side. So I would like to see a little further clarification and addressing some of the community amenities, so that it's clear that are these amenities for the larger communities? Are these strictly for the people who will be living there and accessing those shops? is there an opportunity, as Councillor Grenz brought forward, to actually maybe increase some greenery and trees on just across that access road? Or is that something that maybe could come in the future as a plan? There are some very attractive parking lots out there with shopping malls. I think about Park Royal in West Vancouver, which has a bit of a village look. Now, I realize we're not talking about the whole mall area, but one part of this does propose a change to the whole property. So I think it's valid to bring some of that up here. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with you 100%. Go by there and I think it's very tired looking. And I was glad to see, the grocery store and those different places there, but I could say anything would help. But I think it's going to be fabulous once we get the bottom line and how it's going to look like. I think there's something that will be done. It will be very good. We just have to get the nitty gritty, like you're saying. But thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Grenz.
Thank you. And I think through you to council, I think further to your comments, today we're being asked to advance this to a public hearing, and I can kind of already hear the concerns that will be coming forward from the public on this. And I'd really love it if some of those concerns could be addressed prior to that, so that this project gets the best possible presentation to the public before it goes to that public hearing, because we're going to get the usual questions about and concerns about traffic, but on this site in particular, we'll get the question around traffic through the property itself, which is a private road, and how that will work. We recently approved a project on Wembley Road that really sets a pretty high standard for the kind of construction and amenities that we can see. That includes a number of features that were brought to council without council asking for them, but they're definitely in keeping with the sorts of things that this council's been looking for as regards energy efficiency, as regards creating a healthy sort of community within the project.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a number of shared spaces in there, and I understand some of this will happen through the ADP as well, but I think as we go to a public hearing, we could save hopefully as much of the public's concerns and address those in advance. And I guess the question is how we do that today. And maybe the way to do that is to give it first reading, and then there's some chance in between there, maybe at second reading for some more questions for staff. I do have some more, and then that may not affect the public hearing date. But if we can, maybe that's a question through to staff. Maybe I'll put that as a question if I may. So if we were to give this first reading and then keep the public hearing date, and then at the next council meeting, do second reading, would that have an effect on the timeline?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Grenz. And I can see that our illustrious planner, Mr. Russell, has some thoughts there to share with us. Thank you, Mr. Russell.
If I may, Chair, through to Councillor Grenz. If first reading was received today, it would change the public hearing date because we wouldn't know what it would be. We wouldn't be in a position to set the public hearing date until second reading is given. And there's usually usually roughly a month between when second reading is given to when a public hearing would be able to be held.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Gore.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with what Councillor Grenz just mentioned. We anticipate what the public opposition or public comments, I should say, would be. So it's prudent that we approach. I personally would like to see some revitalization around Wembley Mall. It's definitely due for some facelift, some residential component to it. The current CD12 zone allows that already. So this is amending it to another higher density zone. And we have received concerns from the public, like we did previously for the development on Wembley Mall. I would also like to bring attention to the letter from the senior planner from RDN. I think I was really pleased to see that jurisdictional collaboration on this. So I really welcome this communication from the RDN, and I'm really looking forward to some conversations with our staff and RDN staff. Being an OCP amendment and RDN part of the other side of the road also due for some development in the future, I would really like to tread carefully on this to have public input and public community buy-in in this proposal, which is going to change very hopefully for the betterment of our community. So I would like to defer this, to be honest, not even have the first reading yet until we have this input after the meeting from between our staff members with the RDN. And I want to see another changes that the councilors mentioned already, or things, the questions addressed before giving it a first reading at this time. This is where I'm at right now. I know it's only the first three that are being discussed at this time, but the OCP amendment does. Maybe we can speak to that when those sections of the motion are moved, but that's where I'm at right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gore. Mr. Russell.
Okay, if I may, Chair, through to Councillor Gore as well as yourself, there's a number of points have been, and I'm going to see if I can address all of them. I'm doing my best to remember all of them, but with respect to the regional district, we received correspondence as part of our referral as well as from MOTI. So those were received some time ago, and those were attached to the report. But certainly staff can reach out again with regional staff if that's what council desires, but we have received comment with respect to that. A lot of the elements being discussed are really design elements, which should be addressed in detail as part of a subsequent development permit area. In the case of the multifamily site or the mixed-use multifamily site that this application proposes, it absolutely will need a development permit that will go into all the design details. And that's some of the reason why you're seeing different iterations of the plans. These are really proof of concept. In some ways, it's sort of the curse of sort of providing these plans, which are really just to kind of provide a sort of sense of what's being proposed rather than actually getting into the design elements, which is part of that future development permit application that would go through the design panel, et cetera, where at that, there'll be probably some evolution in the designs as that other future application unfolds. With respect to the mall, anytime, which will ultimately end up being a separate parcel from this site that's under rezoning, when a commercial development proposal, like if a new building came into the mall, that would be an opportunity for council to address some of the points with respect to the current appearance of portions of the mall. Certainly the applicant has certainly has heard what is being discussed, and certainly when their future application for redevelopment of the commercial part of the mall comes in, they certainly have it's been highlighted what some of those points are. With respect to the southern part, when it comes in for a development permit, there'll be landscaping security that will that the city will hold to ensure that the landscaping occurs. With respect to the breezeway at the existing mall, I don't know the specific history on where the planters went, or they may have been so inconsequential that they weren't bonded for, or maybe they were there for a little while and then they started looking shabby and then disappeared. I honestly don't know. But we certainly, at like a snapshot in time, we can secure landscaping so that prior to us releasing the bonding on that date. We even take pictures of it as proof that it looked like what it did. When we receive the funds on that point in time, we certainly can ensure that any landscaping is per the plans in the development permit. As well as our building team reviews the building plans, and they have to be substantially in compliance with the elevation plans in the development permit. Otherwise, they can't issue the building permit. So the design elements we can certainly address as part of those future development permits. Obviously, the development of the south part would happen when they're ready to start, before they start breaking ground. And the mall itself will be dependent on other development activities occurring on the site. And if I missed anything. Sorry, as far as the other question was, I believe, with respect to first reading versus no readings. And again, these are all different levels of signaling, which is entirely up to council, what level of signaling council wishes to demonstrate to the applicant. Either way, we can certainly work with whatever council's decision is. And I think the question is whether the general concept of the use is okay or not. And if the general use is okay, then there's maybe one path. If the proposed use is abhorrent to council, well, then maybe there's another path. But I certainly believe council has a number of options available. And I certainly would suggest that the proponent listen. If we do record these meetings, listen to to whatever the direction council has, that they review the comments that were made today.
Counselor, I'm sorry, Counselor, you're at the table now. Our CAO, please.
Thank you. Through you, I would like to perhaps also suggest that for ease of responding to the concerns, we've heard some general discussion around the council table, but it's helpful to know if there's consensus at the council table around some of those items, or if there's priority items that council as a whole would like to see addressed. It just avoids second guessing or guessing or misinterpreting, what exactly council would like to see in future iterations. It also helps us when going out to the public or hearing comments from the public to kind of understand, where everybody is. So if council is, whether you give a first reading, second reading, no readings, I think staff would certainly appreciate a clearer understanding of where we should be directing the applicant to focus their efforts at this point. And we can also, throughout the zoning process, flag items for consideration in the design stage as well. But I think I've heard a lot of different concerns, and it would be very helpful if there was an understanding of what are your priorities and what you all agree on, or the majority of you at the table here today agree on, so that we could provide that back to the applicant to refine or focus on or clarify some of the items that have been raised.
Yeah. Fine. May I speak? Raise my hand. Councillor Beal. Councillor Beal, please go ahead. I do have a question as well. Is it also possible, or at what point would one request, if it was to go ahead, let's say to first reading, which quite frankly, I don't necessarily have a problem with, could there be, or should there be, an amendment to include restricting the height to a certain amount? Because I understand that there's a request for a relaxation, and I'm not sure, if we want to go ahead with that or limit it to the amount has been stated.
If I may, through the mayor, I'll start, and the director can throw a paper plane at me if he wants to weigh in. So if the scenario is that council wants to consider first reading, or even first and second, you can amend certain elements of that proposed bylaw. Then we would basically give it reading as amended. And as the director mentioned, it's really a comfort level that you're indicating to the applicant of how happy you are with the concept. Kind of referring back to the fact that this is a rezoning application, you really should be at this point focused on is the use and density in the right ballpark for your support. And then of course there are other elements that come into play that can be discussed or considered at a high level, but knowing that you have the ability to be diving down further and deeper into those things if it proceeds to the development stage. So I think staff also don't really have a position on whether this be given first reading or first and second reading. We can rescind second reading if we have to change it, but my recommendation, subject to Blaine's facial expressions, would be that we consider first reading with some suggestions that council might have to amend, and then we can go back to the applicant if necessary on some of those items that you've, as a council, decided need more attention, and then we would basically work on bringing the bylaw back at second reading and an opportunity to discuss whether we've addressed those issues. Sometimes I will say having a bylaw with first reading gives you something to actually start with. So rather than having no readings, but we can work with either or any of those.
And with that in mind, is it also possible to introduce an amendment at second reading, or would be better to do it at first, or perhaps at second meeting would be fine? I see nods.
Yeah.
That would be fine. So
Yeah,
I'm thinking about, looking a little more closely at the height or setbacks or anything like that. Okay.
Sure,
All
if
right.
I may, absolutely. We can, as I mentioned, you can rescind readings if you need
Oh.
to, if there's changes. But I don't know, Blaine, if you want to weigh in, but I think first reading with amendments, if that's where council is more comfortable, we could certainly consider that and help council work through that today if that's where you're kind of landing. But you could do first and second, and if something, and read them as amended, so we can make the changes and move it to the second reading. It just depends on how comfortable you are with the overall concept, I guess.
And I do appreciate that Mr. Russell has provided some clarification that many of the items that may come up as concerns for us can in fact be addressed when we're going to the development permit request and from there. Yes.
I will just mention, and I'm sure this has been covered already, but if there's items that council would like to see as an amenity, amenities are voluntary and part of the negotiation process, but there are things that could be potentially addressed that maybe aren't covered in the specific objectives for the development permit areas. And there are some amenities that are being proposed, but I think I heard someone on council saying that they weren't clear, what the whole kind of package is there. So one of the things that staff could work with the applicant on is a clearer list of what they are proposing as amenities. And that could open the discussion for some of the things that perhaps either wouldn't go as far or maybe wouldn't be in the development permit objectives.
Okay. Yes, certainly for myself reading through this, there's community benefits, but I'm not necessarily seeing community amenities, contributions to community amenities, and are those different things and what is in there to address that. Councillor Wood, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. And just listening to staff, it seems like it would be handy, in my opinion, I would support a first reading, and then we be as specific as possible, if not in this meeting, at least in emails to staff about what we would like to see addressed, whether it's the height of the building or setbacks.
Yeah.
And it also seems, although there's concerns about, say, the aesthetics or look and feel of the rest of the property that is not in this, that those be kind of a separate issue, although we have made comments to them today, and kind of separate those two things and not kind of muddy the waters. But that's what I would support as a first reading, and then we can get back to staff with some specifics that we would like to see addressed for second reading. Thank you.
CAO Kaler.
Thank you. Through you to council, I think that's certainly a great approach, but some of the items we would want council consensus on. So just to flag that, if there's items that are maybe generally a priority for council, we could address those and amend the bylaw, like you mentioned, the setbacks or the height, if that's an issue. And then emails from council are helpful for some of the other items, but you may not agree on those. So that sometimes that could be a challenge if one councillor really wants to see something and another councillor wants to see the opposite. That's where the majority comes into play, and we need a bigger, a more formal approval, I guess.
And with that in mind, I'm wondering, if we went through a list of items that we would like to see addressed, clarified, however, with a referral back to staff to discuss these with the applicant. Would height be one of these? Would community amenities be another? I'm hearing, similar things. Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, substitute Madam Mayor. Anyway, whatever.
Like a TOC.
Anyway.
Yeah. Mayor on call, that's it.
I know.
Go ahead.
Anyway, it's a standard procedure that they give us. It says right here with the amenities, $800 for a unit and then $1,200 for commercial.
Yeah.
Is that sort of the standard now, or is that just for this particular unit? Development. Thank you.
If I may,
CAO. Caleb.
I can't, I need a mirror so I can see what's
Yeah.
happening behind me.
There.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say through you to the rest of council, amenities are sort of a voluntary one-off negotiated thing, but we do see a common theme of that amount being offered for fire department support because these buildings are something that would most likely increase demand or calls for service. And so I think we've seen a trend of that over the last few years in the absence of anything more specific in the OCP policies. But we do see a range. So it's not like set in stone that that's what has to be, but it has been a common, I would say half the folks, if not more, have used that as a way to gauge where their amenity contribution will lie. Other things that people offer are things like extending the sidewalk longer than the frontage of the property, or upgrading something nearby, like a playground. We've seen a couple of folks give funds for a nearby playground in the community, or exceeding any of the minimum requirements that you would be having to do for servicing. So it really is a range, but I would say this one is probably one of the more common suggestions that people put forward to council.
Thank you. So Councillor Grens, would you like to start a shopping list, as it were?
Yeah, sure.
The shopping
I mean,
center?
I think I can speak to some of the items raised by staff just to provide some clarification on where I'm sitting on this. For my part, the use is something I'm in favor of. I'd much rather see residential on this piece of property as opposed to just more commercial.
Yeah.
So I think council is going to be aligned on that. I think by and large, and I don't want to speak for council, but I'm sure we're on the same page, is that given that this area of the city is almost a bit of a downtown and will become that, it's a bit of a node.
Yeah.
That it's critical that this node becomes what our vision is for any of the nodes, which is something that is very livable, that still has a lot of green to it with lots of trees and plants, and that it has opportunities for public gathering and a place to spend time that you want to be, and not just, a parking lot. And so that is the possibility for this area. And given that this is more retail that extends the existing retail, I would hope to see that whatever happens on this specific parcel then also becomes the standard for the rest of the Wembley Mall area. So more green. There are a number of areas where there could be plantings and there aren't, and opportunities for gathering. It'd be great if there was one day, and I know this isn't necessarily within within anyone's control, but like a coffee shop or places where people can gather. Because there's going to be quite a bit of more density in this area. So to the amenity piece, it'd be great if we could get a clear list from the proponent around the kinds of amenities that are part of this proposal, that when it does come to public hearings, that it's very clear for the community what the benefits to the community are for this project. I do have some, I guess, questions that can come through the process and aren't super critical, but I did raise around how the private road will work. I'm not sure. Is there there's an easement? I guess is that on title for because it's gonna be a separate parcel. So I don't know how that all works from a sort of a legal perspective, and that might be just good to know moving forward. Because does this project or this property become kind of its own little island with having to need an easement from the neighboring property? So these sorts of things I think can come through in the next stages, but I would hate to go to public hearing without having a little bit more clarity on what the community benefit is of this project beyond the increased use of residential, which I agree is a is a benefit.
Thank you, Councillor Grenz. I'm just wondering if at this point in time, picking up on your comment about the private road or the easement there, one point of clarification that I would very much like to get from the proponent is whether or not MOTI considered that, you know, as opposed to how it would affect traffic on roads. It was understood that there's no need to have road improvements for the numbers that are expected there. But I'm also looking at where the egress is. And again, that can be perhaps addressed through the advisory design panel, but it's very close to that really awkward spot where people are coming in off Wembley and people are coming through the mall area as well. So one thing that I would like to know is, was that looked at by MOTI as along with the public roads? Mr. Russell, do you know the answer to that question?
If I may, Chair, and Councillor Beal, MOTI would have looked at the overall road network. They wouldn't have looked at the specifics of a private road within the municipality. They would have looked at the broader road network. So that would have been more the city's focus rather than MOTT's focus. They
Okay.
changed their name too.
So, all right. So what I'm hearing from Councillor Grenz is around livability, public gathering space, more green and plantings, although again, that's actually that would come up with the advisory design panel if it's looked at closely. Also, are there any thoughts around the overall height of the building? Is there a desire to have an amendment so that there is no additional relaxation with the height? I see a nod. I see yes, no, maybe so. You're fine either way, or? Councillor Wood, any thoughts about height?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I just wanted to maybe put a question through to staff as to what the big items are that we should mention if we pass first reading. What kind of, without getting into the weeds, so to speak. And so building height, setbacks, what are a couple of the big things that we should be talking about here before we vote on first reading? Thank you.
If I may, through the chair to Councillor Wood, being as precise as possible, and I think as Councillor Grenz made earlier, I think separating out the things that are design elements that will end up being addressed as part of a separate application process in the future. I think those are different items. I mean, it's still worth noting, like, passing that information on to the proponent. But as far as what can be addressed through the rezoning process specifically, they're really things like use, density, setbacks, height. There's also that amenity aspect. So the fire department did the numbers that are in the staff report are a reflection of what was in the fire department memorandum in 2023. So that's what the fire department identified was the what was associated with that. But if there's thing with respect, I know there was a mention made of the accessibility spaces, or the bicycle spaces. So it's certainly possible for the proponent to clarify, are those for residences? Are those for commercial?
Yeah.
Are those for both? As well as there can also be a further thing whether council wants to have those locked down in some sort of way or not. Or the proponent can just respond to council's concerns and propose what they're going to propose.
Okay.
I think I want to clarify the point of height. So the existing zone provides for 11 meters. The proposed amendment is for 20 meters. The building that was shown in the drawing, I believe, was 18.2 or 18.3 meters, that sort of plan. And so as far as the when the OCP was reviewed in 2013, we did do an Ipso-Reid survey as part of that. Over 300 folks within the city of Parksville were called, and Wembley Mall was specifically identified as the average of respondents indicated that 5.3 stories was an acceptable height, at least as part of that statistically substantial telephone survey. So certainly the elevations shown in the drawing seem to be consistent with that. But as I said, if there's the request was for a little bit more than that, more than the 18.2 or 3 or whatever it is, for the 20 to allow for some flexibility. But if council has a discomfort with that flexibility, that could certainly be something that could be pared back potentially. And as part of the development permit process, if the design blows council away, then maybe there's some room
Yeah.
for more flexibility, if that was as an example.
Any further comments at this time? Councillor Gore?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is to our staff. The amenity contribution of $800 a unit, is that collected after the DP is issued, or is it part of the rezoning as when it's approved?
If I may chair through to Councillor Gore, anything that we've indicated in the report are items that they would be secured before final adoption of the bylaw. So
Okay.
yeah, we would not be bringing forward the bylaw for final until the items that have been indicated for being secured are secured. So that would be things such as the fire department contribution. If someone is committed to doing a sidewalk, then we'd either be securing that with some kind of agreement, like a servicing agreement or something similar, as well as the cash bonding for that. Or alternatively, we might get a covenant that says you can't build anything until these conditions are met.
Thank you. So do we have, I better uncover my thing. Pardon me? Yes, could we have a mover and a seconder for the first 3 items. And this is be received for information and considered. So all those in favor? Okay, thank you. That is unanimous. And now item number 4, that council having considered the financial plan and liquid waste management plan in accordance with the bylaw section and the agenda, pardon me, introduce Plan Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2025 number 1492.9 for consideration of first and second reading. Now, could we, I'm hearing, my sense in the room is that there would be support for first reading and with a referral to staff then to discuss further with the developer. Is Councillor, I'm sorry, not Councillor, CAO Kaler.
Thank you. If I may, through you to council, so that this is really at council's discretion. But what we had some conversation around is that if it's being referred back to staff, that we have a clear understanding of what the priorities and the focus would be.
Yeah.
The other alternative would be to amend the bylaw prior to giving it the reading. So if, for example, as the director mentioned, you wanted to change the height to some other number, we would do that now and then read the bylaw for first reading as amended. So whatever number you pick would now replace that. As I mentioned, again, first and second reading, it's up to council how comfortable you are, but we can make changes after that. But it depends on whether those are items that would be applicable to the zone. So just to reiterate, we're looking at use, density, and so density includes things like the setbacks and the height and parcel coverage, those kinds of things. So if there's something that council wants to see changed, my recommendation would be that we change it now, give it first reading as amended. And if there's items like the amenity or something else that council wants us to clarify before second, we can certainly do that.
All right. Thank you. I would like to make an amendment that the height be limited to and that's where I don't have that exact figure in front of us. If it's 18, what is it? 18. That's what I thought, 18.3 meters.
So if I'm-
Understanding if you have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So the first item that you were just reading, item 4, is for the OCP bylaw.
Yes.
So
oh,
we may
right.
want to hold, unless you're reading them together, I was just maybe splitting them out, and we can
Yes.
do item 4 first, which is OCP, and then item 5 is the zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Very wise. And so do I have a mover? Now, let me just get the sense in the room here. My sense is that, as Councillor Wood pointed out, suggested that we move with first reading at this time. I get so that, because it does not make sense to have the OCP amendment for first and second reading and then have something different for the other. So it's really most efficient to have them together, right? Okay, so all of that, can we have for consideration of first reading? So we remove second reading. Now, given that we'd be doing that, we can't really be setting the public hearing at this time, correct? So just to first reading and leave it at that at this time?
Yes, if I may, we would need a mover and a seconder for item 4, with it being amended to remove everything after the word first. So no second reading and no public hearing date.
Right. Okay. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Martin and Councillor Wood. Thank you. Any further discussion about that? All right. All in favor? Okay. For the amendment.
This is,
Yes.
if I may, this is just for the OCP bylaw, so that doesn't have the height specified. It's the zoning bylaw next.
Right, it's
that we would
yeah.
be talking about the height.
Yeah. But do we need to move the amendment first of all? Well, no, because we haven't actually made the motion. The motion is as read, which is removing the second reading and et cetera. So that's fine. So all those in favor? Okay. Opposed? Okay. Councillor Gore, you're opposed?
Yeah.
No, you're opposing the motion. Or?
Yes, if I may. So there is,
Okay.
the way it works is when we have a recommendation, that's just a recommendation. When the motion is moved and seconded as read, so we're
Yeah.
not including
Yeah.
those other
That's-
pieces. We're just looking for council to vote on whether we're giving first reading to the OCP bylaw right now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes, please go ahead, Councillor Gore. We actually voted, but I didn't realize you wanted to say something about that. Okay, my apologies. I missed that. Council, I'm sorry.
Sorry, just for
CAO Keever.
just for clarification. So we did have a vote on the OCP bylaw just now. Are we wanting to take that back?
Sorry, yeah, through Madam Chair.
So, and this is
Yes,
about.
CEO, I wanted to have a discussion on recommendation 4, which
With
is
OCP.
giving OCP the first reading.
Okay, so that was just voted on, so the council would have to agree to.
Right. Can we retract that? Because I'm sorry, I did not realize Councillor Gore wanted to speak to that. Councillor Gore, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to have kind of save these questions because I know we would discuss the OCP, I thought,
Right.
and the fourth point. So first of all, I want to go back to the OCP being amended, and we as a council, strategic prioritizing the OCP review, which we heard from the community is overdue. Our neighbors are doing that. Qualcomm Beach is revising their OCP. They're working laboriously on it. They have community involvement and everything. They're working on quality of life questionnaires and everything. So I think we could learn from our neighbors and move forward on that. I do want to ask staff what the progress is in terms of us taking on the OCP review, what the timeline is. And why should we not consider this after we've done our OCP review, and why at this time?
If I may.
Mr.
through-
Russell,
Oh, I'm going to start
Counselor.
because, and I'll let Blaine weigh in on technical things. We just went through this with the budget with council. So on the 2025 work plan, which is later this year, we do have our OCP process commencing. So we have budget in there for this year, which council just approved to start the scoping and looking at what are the priorities for amending the OCP or reviewing the OCP. The bulk of the work on actually doing the changes and reviewing and meeting with the community will happen towards the end of this year and into next year. So that is on our agenda. We have discussed with council the reasons for pushing that back. It is mostly based on capacity and also the requirements of the provincial government that we cannot ignore or not do. But the planning department, well, really the director with consultants will be working on getting that process up and running as soon as those items are completed, which we anticipate to be in the fall. And so council can at any time start giving direction to staff on what those priorities look like. But normally they happen through a committee process with folks appointed by council to participate in that. I will just mention though, at this point, we're discussing this particular proposal and it's, I would say, completely normal for applications to come in to amend OCPs. That's why there is a process legislatively stated. And so this has been in the works for quite some time. I think it came to council over a year ago. So it was before the discussions around amending the OCP even really started. So we've not heard from council that, you know, we wouldn't be advancing applications. That is kind of the typical process. So I don't really see them being related, but certainly council can try to envision what it thinks might need to be covered for this particular application, but they're kind of two separate things if that clarifies that process.
Thank you. Councillor Gore?
Yes, thank you. I don't want to take up all the air in the room, but if any other council member wants to chime in, please let the chair know. So currently the zone is CD12, which is comprehensive, allows for residential and commercial. Correct.
No. I see a yes and I see a no. Mr. Russell?
If I may, Chair, through to Councillor Gore, the current CD12 zone does not allow for any residential component whatsoever. It's strictly a shopping mall at this time.
Okay.
And the current zone is broken with the current zone is a little bit micromanaged in that it has little specific areas where like in the zone where you could put like a standalone building. So as part of the proposed zoning amendment, that's being simplified. So there'll be one CD12 zone where the mall and the existing arena are. And then there's this new proposed CD12B subzone, which is all part of this broader CD12 zone where the mixed use section is proposed with commercial on the bottom and 4 floors of residential. But yeah, currently there's no multifamily residential component at all.
However, if I may weigh in just on that, we're talking about the OCP amendment right now, and the OCP does envision residential for this site. So that's why I was nodding, because we're talking about the OCP bylaw at this point.
You're
Right.
in sync.
Thank you.
Councillor Gore?
Yes, thanks. The other one is about the transportation master plan. And I know the RDN mentions in their letter that they've actually completed the active transportation plan, and they have some recommendations along Wembley Road for some improvements for active transportation. I was wondering if our staff has any knowledge on where our transportation master plan is when it comes to this section, this part of our neighborhood, of our community. I mean, and going back to the public comments and having walked along Church Road, it is a very, very high traffic area. I have personally seen it. Feels really unsafe and unnerving when vehicles just zip by and you're walking along that road. And the previous application did mention, actually reading the one on Wembley, that when that goes on, the level of service will decrease from, I guess, B to a C or whatever. So all I'm trying to say is I would like us to see what the transportation master plan comes up with in terms of alleviating some of the concerns that the public will have with this development. I would like to see some residential definitely in this neighborhood to go, but having a concrete plan and a timeline for us to work with, how we're going to ease those traffic issues in the area before I can support something like this. I need to know. I need to have that knowledge.
Thank you. CAO Kaler.
Thank you. So through you to council to address the question, the master transportation plan is being reviewed at the senior staff level this week.
Oh.
And then our vision would be to bring that report back to council with some recommendations that are, I guess, road tested, for pardon the pun, by staff in terms of capital costs and feasibility and phasing. My one caution would be that when something is recommended through the master transportation plan, that's the city's cost. So that's our capital investment. When someone has a rezoning application and there's a traffic plan for that site specific thing, we don't want to mix those two things up, because there's some items that are addressed by the developer as part of their offsites, and then there's broader community-based things that we as the city pay for through the master transportation plan. So I would recommend focusing on the traffic plan for that the proponents do for their own developments, because they contribute to the cost of those. So our master transportation plan is basically what feeds our capital plan and priorities and recommendations around, what, if council will recall, we have that roughly $4 million envelope every year that we use for capital renewal. And usually the master transportation plan, the sewer plan, all of those master plans feed into where that money gets spent by the city. So there's two kind of separate items there that I just don't want confusion around. And there was another part of that question, which I forget now. Sorry, I think
Okay.
we're trying to focus on this development
Yeah.
and what the developer can do. And then the master transportation plan is really the city's responsibility, I guess. And there would be something coming back to council in the next quarter with recommendations on the citywide transportation strategy.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to call the question on this particular item. So again, that's item number 4 as with kind of amended, but I mean, it has been changed and as read. And so all those in favor? Okay, that would be, and opposed? Thank you, Councillor Gore. Okay. So that has passed. Yes, okay. Get to turn the page. Item number 5. And this is that, again, I am going to, now here we do need to have some specifics. If there are amendments, correct? Yes, CAO
Yes.
Kaler?
Yes, through you, if council wishes to change elements of the zoning bylaw, we would specify those in this motion and give that bylaw first reading as amended.
Okay, all right. Are there, from
Yeah, we have-
council members, are there any requests to amend this particular recommendation? Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. While I might have my own personal opinions as to the height of the building, I would refer to our Director of Community Planning and Building that there was a statistically significant survey that went out, and we had enough respondents that said the height of the building, in this case, would be fine with them. And so I don't want to, second guess what that poll gave us for information. And so if we are going to speak to the height, I'm going to just use that data to inform my decision, and I'm not going to support anything that's going to lower the height of the building. Thanks.
CAO Kaler?
Just suggesting that council, we need a mover and a seconder.
Yeah,
But if
before we
someone-
discuss it.
Yeah, if someone wants to add in a change,
Right.
they can do so.
Thank you for keeping me on track again. So I will go in keeping with the spirit of item number 4, that council, in accordance with the bylaw section of the agenda, introduce zoning and development amendment bylaw 2025 number 2000.152 for consideration of first reading. Do we have a moved Counselor Wood and seconded Counselor Grenz? Okay, any discussion? I do have, oh, Counselor Martin, please.
I mentioned a concern about the height, and I agree with Counselor Wood that we would go with what has been suggested with the height.
Thank you for that.
Because I know we've had some buildings here that have, I've been concerned about the height too. And then when they come up, they're just beautiful. So we've had a lot of positive. So we have to go with the 20, I think it's 20 meters. And they're going for 18.3, but maximum 20 or something like that.
I do have a question regarding that to Mr. Russell, if I may. Mr. Russell, if it remained at the 18.3, would that in fact match the 5 point some stories as was found earlier with the OCP, or do we need the 20 meters?
If I may, Chair, I can't answer your question exactly.
Okay.
But I'll do my best to answer it in my own fashion. The proponent requested a 20-meter height. My understanding was that was for flexibility, future design flexibility, depending on the commercial tenants. That being said, the elevations and the drawing in the buildings that were presented in their application package shows a 5-story building achievable with 18.3 meters height. So ultimately how permissive or restrictive council is in that 5 stories is really at council's discretion.
Thank you. Counselor Wood?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I just want to kind of reiterate the information that we have so far, that the $800 amenity contribution per unit seems to be par for the course with other developments, and then other specifics that we're trying to handle, building height, setbacks, general usage, density, and then those amenity contributions seem to be some specific ones that we could address during this discussion. Thank you.
Did I hear you suggest that height is something that could be addressed later on as well, or no?
Just that it's one of the major items that we could be specific on. I'm going to support, the information that we have already paid for that someone paid for that survey of the building height. So I won't support lowering the building height at this point, but I think we have a few kind of off ramps later on during this entire process. And this is a very general overview of the development from my understanding. Thank you.
If I can wade into this, I did looking at the plans. It looks like the 18.3 would in fact provide for the plan that was put forward. So I'm not sure that one needs to go to the 20 meters, but if the ADP wants to, add to that, I'll go along with the group. Any other thoughts on this? So at this point in time, it's not looking like we're having any amendments because the use, I'm hearing that people are happy with the proposed usage, that we get some residential in this area, and that many of the items and concerns that have been brought forward can be addressed at the development permit request and ADP range. I do have some concerns about increasing the height, but it's interesting to hear from previous polls about the OCP that this area is identified. But given that it is so close to single family across the street, I have some concerns there. All right, enough of that. Any final comments? Councillor Grenz.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Council. I think I'll just reiterate that generally my overall concern or request around this proposal, I don't have an issue with the use. I don't have an issue. I love seeing that this will be residential, not just commercial. It really comes down to what the public will see for this area after this is done. And the vision for Wembley Mall, the anchor of this area is this mall. And so whatever the proponent can do to cast a vision for that area that the community can get on board for, would go a long way towards seeing public support for this particular project, which is the next thing to happen on this property. And there may be more things happening, but I think the public needs to see a vision for this part of Parksville that is consistent with what we want to see in the community in terms of livability and opportunities for community building and meeting your neighbors. There's going to be a lot of people walking to Wembley Mall from the neighboring
Oh,
properties.
yes.
And that is a change that from what Wembley Mall has been before and what lots of Parksville has been before, where it's a bit of a strip mall, but it's moving towards being more of a walkable, livable community where you can go to the coffee shop right around the corner. You can walk to meet your friends. You can walk to get your groceries. So that does mean that Wembley Mall needs to evolve to match that. And that's what the vision is that I hope that the proponent will put forward to the community in order to get buy-in for this particular change in the OCP.
Thank you, Councillor Grenz. And given that the owner of this particular property, this sub area, is in fact, from everything I understand, the owner of that larger property, which is Wembley Mall, a lot of this comes down to trust. It comes down to, do we trust and can we trust, and hopefully we can, that as this moves forward, and if it moves forward, that what we would see is something that is a real benefit to the people who live there and shop there, but also to the larger community and to people coming into that end of town, because as you say, it is a node, it is a hub for that particular area and kind of an entrance to the north end of town. So, all right. Yes, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. And just on your excellent comments there and Councillor Grenz's comments, we're just trying to see forward to the comments from the public, which will be traffic for sure. There'll be comments about the density, the amenities, what it brings to the community, to Councillor Grenz's comments. And so, anything that the proponent can see coming for complaints that we can help the community get to, a spot where a certain percentage of the community is accepting of this, that helps us get to that approval as well. And so I think that's kind of what we're trying to get to here. And obviously it'll help the proponent understand what we're trying to get to as well. Yeah. Thank you.
I have what I hope is a final question to Mr. Russell, and that is, Mr. Russell, if I do understand that as things move along, things can come up as you're looking at digging in the ground and all these sorts of things, and that there might be some changes. However, would we be right in thinking that the plan as presented is basically going to be the plan that comes forward, as in that building will be in that particular area, that we would not expect to see a huge change in what is presented to council?
If I may, Chair, to yourself. It's always a difficult question, because really the purpose of the drawings at the time of rezoning are really to sort of provide a general concept, right, so that you can kind of envision what it might conceptually sort of look like. And in this particular case, they've put a lot of details into those designs. So usually if someone puts a lot of details into those designs, there's a high probability within a short time window, if this project ultimately goes ahead to construction, that it would be, pretty darn close to more or less to what is being presented today, because otherwise they've wasted a whole bunch of money, right, doing very detailed design on something they're not going to build. That would be just a silly idea to do that. That being said, we don't know what market conditions can be or how long things might change, where something doesn't go ahead for a number of years, where something would come back with a different proposal. And so really the zoning is providing like an envelope where the building can be built, but the ultimate style and design details and what kind of where the driveway is located and what kind of landscaping, that ultimately be addressed at the development permit when they're much closer to getting ready to dig holes in the ground. And so this, I said that there's a really good chance this is what they're going to build, but there's no way to guarantee that. And just look at it that there's an envelope. That's something that most likely, like, that building will be there at least for the short term time frame. I know I thought it would be the last question, but I have one more, and that is,
going back to the correspondence, the comments that were made by people in the neighborhood, there was some comment about a lack of cooling for the sites. Now, I'm not adept at reading these plans to see whether that is there or not. So perhaps this came up in conversation. I don't know during those, that public information piece. If it's not there at present, is this something that we can ask for, or is it something that if it's not in our particular building code, then we can't really ask for that?
If I may, Chair. So there's different tools that can be utilized. So we're not in a position to supersede the BC Building Code as far as what we can do with a regulatory bylaw, for example. So our building bylaw can't describe something beyond what the BC Building Code states. My understanding as the province believes that climate change is a thing, that they are working on including provisions in the code that deal with, and this is part of their energy efficiency provisions, that they are looking at specifying certain temperature parameters that new buildings will be required to contain. So there's some aspects that's going to be addressed at the provincial level.
Okay.
If the city wanted to be more specific, we could certainly have council could certainly request the proponent provide more details on that. And then there's some of it's a leap of faith. You can take the proponent on their word that they're going to do something. You can, if you don't have that faith, you can, a restrictive covenant could be provided where certain terms are in that covenant. Something like that covenant would take some time, a little bit of time, not a lot, but a little bit of time for them to prepare. And it would need to be back to the city before a public hearing date is set, so that the public and council have that document. But we can certainly look into, I can certainly touch base with my building inspection staff to determine what stage the province is at with setting those cooling and temperature parameters with respect to residences, and report back as part of that report. And if the province has implemented that, then maybe there's less for the proponent to do. And if not, then I will certainly have a conversation with the proponent on what they believe or what they're prepared to do to address that point.
Okay, thank you very much. CAO Kaler.
Thank you. If I may, while you were chatting there, I was just looking on the provincial government website, and we can send this to council, but it looks like in April of 2024, there were changes to the code on the minimum and maximum temperatures. So we can send that to you, to council.
Okay.
So it basically says at least one space in the house must be no warmer than 26 degrees and then no colder than, I think it says 18, but yeah, we can send that to council.
I only smile thinking, I'd be in the bathroom with the bathtub filled with cold water, and that might satisfy that. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the trouble to look that up. That's great. Any further comments, questions? I'd like to call the question on this then. So we have a mover, we have a seconder, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. That is carried. I would like to thank everyone here, and I would like to say a special thank you to the representative in the audience for your time as we wrestled through this. And this might be I guess we've got 2 years under our belt, but it's still relatively new. And as you know, once it's built, it's hard to pick at some of those things. So I really appreciate your patience and understanding here. And there are, I hope you also heard there are many things that are real pluses in here and potential wins for the community. So thank you for your time and your patience. All right. Moving on to item number 5, we have bylaws. So that's carrying on with this then. Now, so item number 5 then, seeing as how, okay, what do we do here now? Can we just look to the, we're just going to remove this at this time, correct?
So
Go ahead.
if I may make a suggestion,
Yeah,
I would suggest that we get a mover and a seconder to
To read.
read the OCP bylaw 1492 a first time. And we end it at that. That's
Okay.
consistent with what was discussed.
I wondered.
And
Thank
then
you.
similar for the zoning bylaw. So it would just be reading them both as a first time and no other items at this point.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Plan Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 1492.9. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that Plan Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 1492.9 be read a first time? And that Plan Parksville Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 1492.9 be advanced, oh, no. No, I'm just sorry. I should read ahead before I read out loud. Forget what I said there for part 2. So just that first item and just that read that first time. Do I have a mover, Councillor Wood, and a seconder, Councillor Martin? Any discussion at this time? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Okay. And opposed? Thank you, Councillor Gore. And this is carried. And again, bylaws, one reading and advanced and one reading. I'll change that. Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 2000.152. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 2000.152 be read a first time? Moved by Councillor Wood and seconded by Councillor Grenz. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Oh, okay, got it. And opposed? Thank you, Councillor Gore. Okay, and that is carried. And bylaws, again, bylaws, 3 readings, Water Service Amendment Bylaw 2025, point number 1320.34. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that Water Service System Amendment Bylaw 2025, number 1320.34 be read 3 times? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Martin. And discussion. No discussion. This council, no discussion? We like water. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? No. And that is carried. That is unanimous. And bylaws again, final adoption, 5-year financial plan, 2025 to 2029, number 1594. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that 5-year financial plan 2025 to 2029, number 1594, be reconsidered and finally adopted, signed by the mayor and corporate officer and the corporate seal affixed thereto? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Gore. Any discussion? I would like to make a comment that I really would like to thank staff, Jetta, and all the council and those who are not here as well for all the thoughtful insights and input into wrestling this beast to the ground, as it were. So all those in favor? All right, thank you. That is unanimous and that is carried. Right. Notice of motion. Are there any notices of motion today? Seeing none, we'll move on. And number 7, liaison reports. I'm first on the list and I'll go. And I'd just like to mention regarding the Oceanside Community Arts Council that they do have listings out there now for all kinds of courses, which people might not be aware of. They may think that it's about exhibits, and it certainly is about exhibits, both at the Arts Council, the art center, but also at the Bayside. But there are also many, many classes on a variety of things. And some of them are 2 hours long, some of them are 4 hours long. Might be fabric arts, mosaic, might be musical in nature. So it's much more than a go and have a look, but there are also courses and you can find out more online. Shifting to Councillor Martin. Sorry, any questions about that? No, I didn't think so. All right, Councillor Martin, please go ahead.
First of all, the PDBA, they had a Happy New Year. I don't know if any of you were there. Huge success with over 250 kids and parents attending. That was a big deal on New Year's Eve day at noon. I was there. It was wonderful. Hot chocolate lineups everywhere, music, children face painting and the whole works. It was just lovely. A Memorial Plaza Christmas tree. This is from Teresa Cooper, the executive director. Wants to thank you to the operations crew for their help in putting up the community tree in Memorial Plaza. As it was our first time, there were a few kinks in the process, but the team was very easy to work with. We're happy to report that the tree stood proud and with no interference from anyone other than 6 missing lights. So that is an accomplishment. It's right there. It's there during the holidays. That's lovely. And the third thing is the Imagine Parksville Downtown project completed its second phase last week. A select group of residents is to provide feedback to zero on an identity for Parksville Downtown. Many thanks to Blaine Russell for his input and participation on our steering committee. So they're very, I would say, active board. It's exciting what they do, and they are all in there. They're all in for our downtown. My second report is for the museum, Parksville Museum. The new president, Nancy Martin, called a board meeting on the 9th of January. That was a very extensive board meeting. The museum is closed until spring. However, private events such as weddings and rentals will continue. So there'll be further announcements as to when they reopen, but they're closed right now. And I'd like to add this, I didn't put it on my list, but the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere region, their new premises, and this has been out before, is 124 2nd Avenue, Qualicum. And I wanted to express what it is about, this so people know this. It's an educational and information center. It's apparently it was the building that was the Chamber of Commerce building at one time many years ago. It's a lovely building, very functional. And there's an open house on January 24th. So if anyone wants to go there on January 24th from 10 to 5. So please drop by. It's for all residents and people who are of interest to drop by. So they're getting their feet wet and being involved in the community. And that's where they have the meetings, the roundtable meetings and everything now. So that's the last of my reports.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Yes, I have the January 24th event in my calendar.
Yes, that's
so
good.
hopefully I'll make it.
Yeah.
Councillor Gore, please, if you could report on Access Oceanside Association.
So thank you, Madam Chair. I had a meeting with Access Oceanside last Wednesday. AOA is now focused on accessibility in the commercial areas. So they are looking at downtown businesses. Perhaps some of the businesses do not have door actuators, so people with mobility aids cannot get into or out of the businesses. Some of the aisles are not wide enough for people with scooters or mobility aids. So they're wanting to work with the local businesses. They are meeting with PDBA and the Tourism Association. So some of our liaison council members will perhaps meet with them. We're looking for a collaboration with everybody on how we can make our commercial spaces more accessible, so everybody can go and shop and also support our local businesses. So yeah, that's what we're working on. Apparently, there's an app called Access Now, works like Google reviews. So people with mobility aids can actually review the businesses and rate them how accessible they are. And I think it will be tied to Google reviews. So but those will show up on local businesses which are accessible and the ratings as well. So some exciting news coming up from AOA. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. And now some special business. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation pursuant to section 91(1) of the Community Charter? Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider an item relating to discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Grenz. All those in favor, or any further discussion, all in favor? And thank you, that is carried.